Four brewers, four beers, four ideas. In this video, we're going to dive into the details of the intention behind each of the four brewer versus brewer beers. My name is Nate. My beer was Whispers of a Ghost.
My name is Alex Cordero, and my beer was Windswept.
My name is Suds, and I brewed Steady Glow.
My name's Turbo, and I brewed From Fields to Glass.
So the idea of being a reflective human is something that we talk about at Treehouse a lot. And the concept behind Whispers of a Ghost is that all around us, we get to enjoy the product of other people's passions throughout time. Whether it's in your local town or whether you're traveling to Rome or Sicily or Paris, you are surrounded by the efforts and the magic of people who came before us. And those are the whispers of the ghosts. And the idea is that maybe we pause and pay homage to those people and their effort from time to time. And maybe if we're so lucky, our whisper of our own ghost will persist long after we're gone.
I've traveled to many different hop farms. Over the years, built up some good relationships with some farmers, and I wanted to create a blend with a lot of farm-specific lots. I've selected 9 different hop farms that I've been to. It was kind of cool to see how all these lots express flavor and aroma and character together with a specific blend.
The name Windswept originates for my affinity for bonsai trees. And if you look at the Treehouse logo, it sort of already resembles a bonsai tree. There's a lot of different iterations of bonsai trees, and one of them happens to be the Windswept design. And what happens with this design is it appears that the tree is being constantly blown by the wind off into one direction. If you were to check out the date stamp at the bottom of the can, it says heavy wind, strong roots. And I found that to be kind of fitting for our company because we're in an industry that's ever evolving and changing, and there's a lot of pressure and a lot of challenges. I'd like to think that our company is built for the future and has established roots.
Ryan and I were partners for this Brewers versus Brewers battle, and we have similar taste in music. So as soon as we dialed in our recipe, we started looking up different song titles and albums to figure out a name for the beer. I really wanted to keep my label simple, so I decided to go with a black and white label. I really thought that would help make the beer pop when it was being photographed for the public.
In my opinion, I think Windswept has the most original label design. The design itself was painted by my wonderful mother-in-law, Wendy Deneau. She did a oil on canvas painting. We brought it to our photography department. They took a high-resolution photo of it. That got emailed to the graphic design, and we ended up with this with the Treehouse overlay on top. One of the revisions I would make in the future if we were to do this again, if you look at the font on the can, it comes across as kind of difficult to read, and so if we were to redo this, we would put some sort of a blank background on there.
I have the pleasure of working with our graphic design team all day, every day. In a sense, I am our creative director, so every can design that you see, all the copy that you see, I do have a part in nearly all of it. I worked on this can in particular, I worked with Ryan in the graphic design office. I wanted it to be very simple. I didn't want the fanciness of the label to influence positively the score of the beer. I wanted the beer to speak for itself. And with the concept of Whispers of a Ghost, I thought a bonsai tree was a beautiful encapsulation of that idea, in so much that if you encounter a 100-year-old bonsai tree, chances are that someone that's no longer with us had their hand in shaping that bonsai tree, so it kind of strikes right at the heart of the idea behind the beer.
The whole idea is literally taking the hops from the fields and put it in your beer. Just wanted to have that picture where it was like a glass of beer in the hop field. I worked with Jackie in our graphics department, and we developed a label together.
I brewed a few curiosities prior that utilized Nectaron, so I knew I wanted to add that hop. A lot of the hops and grain, I wanted to use products that I actually traveled to their locations to see firsthand. So a malt house in Canada I visited, I utilized some of their wheat. Ryan and I also traveled to the Pacific Northwest to Idaho, where we visited Mill 95 and Jackson Hop Farm. So we used pink in that recipe. If I were to brew this beer again, I feel like the aroma came off very nicely with some strawberry, but it didn't pull through in the taste. So I think I would utilize more pink hops on the hot side as well as dry hop. I'm also pretty curious to see how it would do using our house yeast. I used the blend for this beer, which I really liked. I feel like it dried the beer out nicely and gave it a nice bitterness, but I think it might amplify the melon and berry give it a little bit more juice if I use the house yeast.
My recipe was pretty straightforward. I wanted to brew something that people are enjoying in the moment, some stuff that has been coming out from Treehouse recently, most importantly, New Zealand hops. So this is a mixed bag of pure New Zealand hops. We've got Super Sauvin, which was kind of risky for me to use because we haven't used that prior. This is the first beer that we use Super Sauvin on. It's super punchy. Think Nelson Sauvin with almost like a purple grape instead of a white grape. My favorite lot of Motueka from Eggers hops. There's some Waimea in there, which is probably the most underrated hop to come out of New Zealand. And lastly, the newest hop that we've been kind of obsessed with recently, which is Paradisi. One of my other revisions would be to take away one half of the yeast blend and just go with our proprietary house yeast. We used the other half with the yeast that we found in the data set a couple years back, and I think it dried out the beer a little bit too much, and we would probably just go with the house blend. On brew day, I was probably short about 125 pounds of base malt, and so I was shooting for a 1080 target density. It came in a little short, and I think I used a little bit too much under-modified malt.
If we were to brew this beer again, there's probably 3 different areas that I would focus on maybe tweaking or changing. One, the yeast itself. I should have just stayed with old reliable and stuck with our house yeast. I tried to enhance certain things in this beer by blending different yeasts together. It didn't necessarily work out the best in my favor. 2, I'd probably go back to using dextrin instead of using the chit malt to enhance like body and foam, because the chit kind of can give off that grassy note that I don't really want, because I already have Cascade in this beer, which already has a little bit of a grassy note. And 3, I would probably work more with the hop blend itself. I feel like I went a little too heavy on using the Nelson and the Cascade. It's a little aggressive on the hop character, and I think it would have been more smooth if I leaned more on like the Citra.
I utilize a lot of New Zealand hops in this beer. I definitely used a little bit of American hops, and I utilize an ingredient that those guys are not aware of, which I think is quite fun. You know, I used a little bit of Nelson, I used a little bit of Motueka. Nelson in particular is a very divisive hop. So if you want to win a brewing competition, I would argue to not use Nelson. Treehouse hasn't become who we are by not taking chances, and I thought it was a good time to challenge myself to make a beer that could beat those guys while going outside the Treehouse box. I kind of did that intentionally because I didn't want all of our beers to taste the same. I went to great lengths to kind of have mine stand out, and ultimately I think that it did. If I were to brew this beer again, that's the magic of Treehouse. Now, if you judge a new Treehouse beer on the first batch, and you write it off based on the first batch, I think you'd be making a huge mistake. Because even beers like Julius, Green, and Haze, we consider unfinished. We tweak. We travel the world genuinely trying to find the most expressive versions of different hops. So Whispers of a Ghost is basically a sketch of a beer. And now with subsequent batches, we would paint, right? We would create the masterpiece. And if I were to brew Whispers of a Ghost again, the truth is I did make a few mistakes on the brew day. Primarily, my mash temperature came in slightly low. I didn't monitor the temperature of our hot liquor tank when I was mashing, so I made the assumption that my mash water could be hotter than I could actually get it to be, because I didn't check the temperature of the HLT before I mashed in. I wish I could have that one back. Also, when we're brewing, it's a lot like cooking where you make adjustments on the fly. My sugar content essentially was coming in a little bit higher than I had anticipated. And as a result of that, I cut it with a small amount of water. And in this particular instance, I probably shouldn't have added the water because I think that the beer could have used the body. The other thing that I would change is that I use the yeast blend. Experimenting is in my DNA, and coming up with Treehouse's house yeast has taken us years and years and years to coax that character out. Took a chance and used the yeast blend that was risky. And when I brew it again, I'm going to use the core blend to make this beer be a little bit chewier. I think if I had one strong criticism of this beer, it was a little bit grassy on the finish, a little bit too bitter for me, not quite juicy enough. And these are changes that I can very easily make on a subsequent batch. If you're trying this beer for the first time, hopefully it's delicious, but also hopefully for us, it's the worst version of it you'll ever try, because each subsequent batch, we're going to work really hard to make it better. Speaking not just of Whispers of a Ghost, but speaking to all the beers that the guys made, you guys got a kind of a peek behind the curtain. And this kind of competitive energy for Treehouse, for our products, is real. It's why I think it was so exciting for us to be able to tell our story. And there's a real energy behind Treehouse and the beer that we make and how much passion we have for it. And this competition has motivated us even further, and I think brought us even closer for the shared goal of making the best beer possible. So this is not the last you'll hear of Brewer versus Brewer. Your participation was awesome. The Google form feedback was optional, but I would say something like 80% of people left comments. I think next time we do it, we'll make that a requirement, because that feedback to us, like that real, like thoughtful, intelligent, like you were speaking directly to us feedback, versus like I'm throwing feedback into a black hole on the internet, i.e. Untapped, is way more valuable. So all in all, this was an incredibly fun, educational, and useful thing for us. Hopefully it was good and engaging for you. And as always, thanks for watching. Leave your thoughts down below. We'll see you next time. Take care.